on today's After News, WWE have been blasted for the unentertaining Gunther beating Jey Uso.
Bryan Danielson's complicated thought process on Vince McMahon.
Is a former NXT standout about to make a WWE return?
And Athena announces a new regular all-women's show.
I'm Adam Wilborn.
I'm Michael Hamflett.
And this is the After News. So, a lot of conversation in the past 7 days, of course, about Gunther dethroning Jey Uso to become World Heavyweight Champion. Jey Uso with a chance to, I suppose, start the climb back to the top of that mountain in that King. He's the mystery man in the King of the Ring qualifiers tonight. If you want to know our thoughts on that, check out the Raw Preview podcast, wherever you get your podcast from. But not everyone is happy, including Rikishi, obviously. That makes more sense than most, I suppose, that Jey Uso lost the title to Gunther. So, is Jonathan Coachman a bit of a regular on the news at the moment?
Yeah, we're part of the problem, sorry.
He's got some things to say. I like Coach, like when we met him at
Mania.
I
did, yeah.
When we met him at Mania, I think it's 35. He genuinely couldn't have been a nicer man for me.
Affable fella.
Yeah, 10, 15.
Seems like he's chasing aggregation with these comments and seems like it's working.
So yes, he is not best pleased about the loss of Jey Uso to Gunther and what that means for the World Heavyweight Championship going forward. He was on his Behind the Turnbuckle podcast and he said Jey Uso is way more over than Gunther. That is a fact. He sells way more merchandise than Gunther. That's a fact. Why take the title off Jey and give it back to someone I find incredibly unentertaining? Now, wrestling is subjective. I will sit here and say that. I will also sit here and say, I mean, I wouldn't want Jey Uso to being outsold in merch by Gunther, as much as Gunther's great and he's got a great aesthetic. Jey Uso, yes, he's one of the top merch sellers. Doesn't mean he should be World Heavyweight Champion. Doesn't mean, it does if it's carrying cross. But, other people, and also, that's kind of the point, is you'd want someone who's like a beloved fan favourite to be chasing him. I don't know who's going to be going forward.
Yeah.
That's why you put the title on Gunther. You don't put the title on Gunther so everyone can be like, yay, Gunther!
Coach knows this and wants us to talk about it to plug whatever podcast he's talking on at the moment.
Behind the Turnbuckle.
There you go. There's another go. Shout for you, Coach. Well done. You win again. Say something else
It's
after.
almost as good as our podcast. And if you need any help, you know where we are.
Yeah. Say something after tomorrow and we'll talk about it on tomorrow's news. That's how this cycle works.
Do we ever get aggregated?
Probably not. We never say anything.
Come on.
We never say anything incendiary or anything of any sort of worth to the aggregators and the clickbaiters because our analysis is hard-hitting and meaningful. Unlike the headline-grabbing stuff that the coach is going for. Look, I also have nothing but nice experiences of Jonathan Coachman when I'm not listening to his wrestling podcasts. Here's the thing. The Jey Uso Gunther title change, I think, has resulted in quite a few people this week showing their ass in terms of how much they're actually watching week to week. You can disagree on, and me and sort of Michael Sidgwick on our podcast have done so, about the validity of Jey Uso as like a world champion, for example. But I think what most people are watching Raw every week can agree on is the fact that as a champion, one of the interesting things about him as a world champion was that on any given night he could be beat. He felt far more vulnerable than anyone else that's held a world title in this Triple H era. If you, in fact, track back through this Triple H era, I think almost every world and WWE title has changed hands on a WrestleMania or a SummerSlam.
Yeah, you were there the other day.
With the exception of this one. And that in itself speaks to, obviously, how Jey Uso could turn up any single week and lose that title, especially when he's doing what Gunther said he was doing, which was helping his friends out a little bit too much, not necessarily behaving as a world champion should.
It's been a great story.
Yeah, he was coming off the back of taking that Asai moonsault off Logan Paul, which was in his attempt to help Cody Rhodes. He'd also previously helped CM Punk in his feud and Sami Zayn in their feud with Seth Rollins' new stable. And Gunther highlighted that maybe wasn't smart business and then proved himself correct when he took the title. That's storytelling, Coach. Remember that? You worked for the company for long enough. I know you worked for Vince McMahon, so you wouldn't have experienced that. But yeah, that's fairly tight storytelling for the Jey Uso character, which, as you point out, may not be done and dusted because he works the King of the Ring qualifier tonight. And if and when he doesn't get back in the hunt, presumably they'll have something lined up. Maybe even a reunion with Jimmy based on the New Day poking the bear after.
I think he wins tonight.
You reckon?
So we got Rusev and Sheamus.
Yeah.
They take each other out. Bronson Reed. That's a long running feud already. Or they started stuff with L.A. Knight.
Yeah.
I think Jey Uso wins, which would take him through to a semi-final with who would it be? Can't remember. Can you remember this?
I believe it was. Is it Sami Zayn? No,
it's Cody Rhodes.
It's Cody Rhodes, isn't it?
Which is amazing. It's Sami Zayn versus Randy Orton on the other side of the bracket.
That's right. Yeah. Sorry about that.
I love that. I love it.
They're captivating brackets.
Yeah.
We will see. There is something.
When's Jade Cargill, Roxanne Perez? That's got to be soon.
That's SmackDown on Friday night, I think.
Oh, Oh, Ambassador, you're spoiling us.
Well, we are very lucky to have the Fed in our lives.
Always.
This version of it, at least. Just remember that, Coachman. Anyway, look forward to seeing what you've said on your podcast tomorrow when we talk about it on tomorrow's afternews or whenever, because that's how this works. Switching gears to Bryan Danielson and Vince McMahon.
Yeah.
We hear this, I guess, like John Cena has spoken about his sort of relationship with Vince McMahon and kind of said, look, I'm going to keep saying what I think about him, which is that I love him and all that. Bryan Danielson, less so. And I'm going to try and approach this delicately because he's kind of referring to the same people I just dug out, and I am one of them, the clickbaity people that then want to take these comments and use them out of context. I'm going to try and keep these as in context as possible. Because the headline
I'm not even
is...
going to speculate on this, I'll just let you read it.
Well, so he said on the MJ in the Midday podcast, when asked about his relationship with Vince McMahon, he said that it has its ups and downs. I'm not going to answer too much. There is too much, honestly, clickbaity headlines that could come out of that. And too many family things that are sensitive to my family specifically. You know what he's referring to there, obviously. Part of everything that's gone on involves my mother-in-law. I also have a very complicated thought process. As a boss, he has his good parts and his bad parts. That's everybody. It's a really tough thing for me. I have a hard time internally. I'm not even talking about it in public. I have a hard time with the whole concept of Vince McMahon. He goes on to add, when he was working with WWE, there's the idea of a career and what he did for my career, and I consider that kind of a separate thing. When I'm looking at Vince McMahon, the human being, how he was to me backstage, we're talking about a guy who, when my dad passed away, gave me the best hug I've ever gotten. I'm not somebody who is necessarily concerned with career advancement. Being a world champion was never this thing I aspired to. I love the fact that I could do the thing, and I love the fact I could make a living. But there is this treatment of me as an employee, but there was a treatment of me as a human being, and that's the part that I find hard to rectify with the things that they're accusing him of. The way he treated me as a human, treated me very well in a way that is kind of hard to describe. There is also negative aspects about Vince McMahon. That's Bryan Danielson being very Bryan Danielson and dealing with that question and that line of questioning, as he kind of pointed out earlier in that quote, from very much in the middle of a personal side of this as well as the professional one. Just thought we'd offer those thoughts in what we hope is a non-clickbaity way, I guess. We wanted to report it, we wanted to talk about it, let us know what you think about this in the comments, be nice about it, it's a delicate subject matter. But I think these kind of, I think I wanted to magnify these comments without glorifying them. I think is the attempt here, because I think it's important that Bryan Danielson, when he wants to, gets to speak about this, but gets his full quote played out, not any sort of, like, we're not lifting little bits out of it, as some places might say. Bryan Danielson on Vince McMahon.
Absolutely. Right, let's talk about this NXT, or former NXT star, I should say, who could be making a return to WWE very soon. Loads of names recently have been slated to be backstage at SmackDown. Hikuleo was one we talked about last week. I think he even worked a dark match, possibly, and may well factor into the whole solo. As long as you say those 4 words, you're welcome back, Jacob. I don't think he's going to say them.
There was a noticeable gap on Solos of the shoulder where there was JC Mateo, wasn't there? That felt like it belonged to somebody else now.
But lots of reporting about people being backstage at SmackDown. And another name that has been reported by Fightful Select is Kiana James. Real talent down in NXT, brought up to the main roster, injured very, very early on in her run, and we haven't seen her since. But she was in Lexington, Kentucky for SmackDown last week, of course. She obviously didn't make an appearance on the show, but she's been out of action for nearly a year. And I'm really excited to see how Kiana James fits in, because she had this lawyer character down in NXT.
A businesswoman.
Yes. And she... It's a stacked women's division, isn't it? Look at it right now, across the board, including NXT, but particularly on the main roster with the likes of, obviously, Stephanie Vacue, and Julia, and Roxanne Perez, and then all the current talent they already had there with your Charlotte Flairs and your Becky Lynch's, and the champions as well. I haven't even mentioned them: Liv Morgan, Io Sky, Tiffany Stratton, Raquel Rodriguez, US IC. Lyra Valkyria, Chelsea Green, Zelina Vega, all that. Where Kiana James fits into all this is going to be very interesting. But it was so devastating as a fan of hers from her time in NXT to see her get selected as kind of a surprise from that NXT Women's Division about a year ago or whatever. Come up and be like, how's this going to work out? And then she immediately pretty much got injured. So best of luck to her. Hopefully she can get back in between the ropes very soon.
I got a pitch for you.
Go on.
I'm sure Kiana James would want to drop straight back into Raw and SmackDown, not least with Evolution on the horizon, and getting back into a significant program. But in order to maybe work off the kinks, work off the rust, may I pitch that she returned temporarily to NXT.
Always.
Where we are finding a bit of dissension between whom? Jacy Jane, the current NXT World Champion, and her partner, who? Fallon Henley, who is, of course, the former Tag Team Championship partner with Kiana James, right as Fallon Henley, and who? Brooks Jensen and Josh Briggs might be finding their way back together. Could we get not just the band back together, could we get the band and Kiana James? She's like, oh, hey, you guys now, actually, you're in the bar. Now let's do our business in the bar. Opens the briefcase, what's it full of? Whiskey.
Oh, I think it's like goo.
Goo and beer.
Yeah.
Yeah?
I love it.
What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, any pitch around NXT, which should be talked about more, it's one of the best shows. Everyone should watch it. I mean, a lot of people do.
You don't even need to look at streaming numbers to add to those.
No, that's CW app or whatever one will make up. I think that'd be great. Everything in NXT is great, and Kiana James is great. Best luck to her when she comes back. It sounds like a good sign that she's backstage.
It is an exciting. You make a point about that roster, and you just reel off those names off the top of your head, and like the same can be said now. It's extending outwards to AEW, thankfully. Tony Storm and Mercedes.
Bianca Belair or Nia Jax or people like that either.
Like you got Queen of the Ring tournament brackets that are absolutely stacked at the moment. The likes of Kiana James returning. It is a grand old time for women's wrestling in North America, and that extends out to the forever Ring of Honor champion Athena, who I'd certainly like to see a bit more of on AEW television. But in the meantime, she is making herself known as potentially one of the more interesting promoter figures in women's wrestling in 2025. She announced on X the confirmation of a passion project, women's wrestling in Texas. It's MPX, which is a company that she's ran or been a part of or has ran for like a decade and a half at this point. But this summer, and it starts with an event taking place on August the 9th, she's going to be running...
Day after my birthday.
Well, that's probably why it's my mum's birthday. Like, and I'm kind of a former women's champion in life, so... I don't know if she's going to be booked for this show.
It's a Saturday, I can tell you that.
If my mum's booked for the show, I want to be on the flight.
Really?
I can't see a name now. My mum isn't Abaddon and Masha Slamovich. But Abaddon and Masha Slamovich will join Vix and Hyan. And the current MPX Women's Champion, Reza Clark. This is going to take place at the MPX Event Center in Bedford, Texas. And yes, Athena is going to be sort of saying, at least for now, that it's going to be part of a new regular lineup of all women's shows that MPX is going to be taking place. So this might be the first, but it certainly won't be the last. It's subtitled Who Runs the World. It's got the Beyonce soundtrack attached to it as this roster reveal. Some big names in there. And some more potentially on the horizon. We saw recently the return to the indies of the likes of Priscilla Kelly and is it Elena Black, the former Cora Jade?
I think so, yeah.
And there will be more, obviously, in the wake of the recent WWE releases and some of these names that are on the way up in the opposite direction. Exciting times.
Yeah, our women's wrestling is probably the healthiest it's ever been.
Certainly North America.
In terms of North American showcasing stuff, I should say that.
You're seeing the visibility of talent has maybe never been better.
Great summer for women's wrestling. You've got huge matches at All In, obviously, with Mercedes and Tony. You've got Evolution 2. You've got this now. This is great. I really, really am happy for Athena and the gang. And excited to see what the show does. Yeah, look, I think for a long time it was sort of ingrained in it, particularly people of our sort of age, that when we were growing up it was like, anyway, now some women are going to
go a break before
or whatever. Now they absolutely can stand toe to toe with their male counterparts, and this is completely justified. I really hope it does well. Keep an eye out for that one.
Will do. Let us know what you think about that. Who else you would like to see enter this going forward, and who else might be on the card?
Pamela's mum.
Yeah, say nice things about her. If you can leave her in the comments below, she's a fine lady. And
a fine lady.
Well, there you go, Mum. You still made it on the internet and we sexualised you. And if you want content just like that, with a little bit less of sexualising my mother, you can do so on the morning news, which should be somewhere around here. If that's not clickbait, I don't know what is. Ryan edited it, so he might have polished these two turds once and for all. Thank you, Ryan. We'll see you soon.